Rain still whispered against the black umbrellas when Eleanor Ellie Marsh stood by her husband's coffin. The ground of Memorial Oak Cemetery was slick, smelling of lilies and wet clay. 42 years of love now rested under that gray sky, sealed beneath polished oak and silence. Ellie didn't cry anymore. Her grief had dried into something quieter, denser, like the air before a storm. Across from her, her son Jacob Jake Marsh hunched in his black suit, knuckles white around a folded tissue. Beside him, his wife Vivian Cross barely pretended to mourn. Her eyes, sharp behind a black veil, darted between faces like a broker scanning investors. Ellie noticed. She always noticed. When the priest finished his final prayer, Ellie leaned down and whispered to the coffin, "Rest easy, Thomas. I'll keep my promise." She didn't know that within hours, that promise would become a vow for survival. The Mercedes rolled through the drizzle back to River Oaks, the family mansion that once pulsed with music and apple pie warmth. Ellie sat in the back seat, staring out at the glassy city. The seat beside her was empty now, Thomas's place. Up front, Vivian drove with one manicured hand, the other tapping her nails against the wheel in an impatient rhythm. Jake sat stiffly beside her, phone in hand, pretending to read something. No one spoke. The air was thick with a strange, polite tension. When they turned into the long driveway lined with oak trees, Ellie's heart squeezed. Home, or what used to be. Then she saw them. 3 brown leather suitcases, hers, already sitting by the garage. Rain soaked the corners. Dust clung like they'd been waiting all morning. Vivian stood under the porch, arms folded, lips curved in a small, satisfied smile. "What's this?" Ellie asked quietly. Vivian's tone was casual, almost amused. "Oh, you already know, don't you? Things have to change now that Thomas is gone." Jake avoided his mother's eyes. "It's just for a while, Mom. We're rearranging a few things." Vivian pulled open the garage door. "You can stay here," she said sweetly. "The room next to the dogs is free." The words sliced deeper than a scream. Ellie stood still, rain dripping from her gray shawl. For a second, her son's lips parted, but he said nothing. That silence hurt the most. She picked up her suitcases, carried them inside the cold garage, and stopped. The place smelled of rust and motor oil. A folding cot leaned against the wall. A cracked window looked out toward the trash bins. It wasn't a room. It was exile. Ellie sat down slowly on the cot, breathing through the damp air. On the small table beside her sat a half-empty box of dog food. She smiled faintly, not from humor, but realization. If this was the battlefield Vivian had chosen, Ellie would fight on her terms, quietly. That night, the rain thickened. Upstairs, laughter echoed faintly. The clinking of wine glasses, Vivian's bright, false giggle. Ellie stayed awake, the sound of rain tapping on the metal roof like a ticking clock. She remembered Thomas's words from years ago. "When they think you're weak, let them. The right silence is your strongest weapon." Now she finally understood. By morning, she had not slept. Instead, she'd started a new ritual. On a small notebook bound in leather, she wrote in neat cursive, "Day 1. No one remembers who I used to be. Let them think I've lost everything. They'll learn soon enough." When Vivian appeared at the door holding a cup of coffee, her perfume sharp and expensive, she smiled without warmth. "You can start breakfast. Eggs Benedict for Jake, pancakes for the kids. I'll just have a salad." She didn't wait for an answer. Ellie obeyed, quiet as mist. The kitchen was spotless, every spoon shining like an order. As she cooked, the memories layered over the present. The smell of Thomas's coffee, his laugh when he'd flip burnt toast. Now there was only the hiss of the pan and the echo of Vivian's heels on tile. Jake kissed his mother's cheek mechanically, his eyes on his phone. Vivian didn't even glance up. "Don't forget to feed the dogs," she said, sipping her latte. Ellie nodded, but her mind was already somewhere else. Beneath the calm surface, gears turning. She'd built this home once. She could take it back. When the house emptied, she returned to her garage and placed her notebook beside Thomas's old fountain pen. Through the small window, a shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds, landing on her hands. She whispered, "They think they've buried me, Thomas, but they've just given me ground to rise from." And for the first time since the funeral, Ellie Marsh smiled. The morning light slanted through the kitchen blinds, slicing across the marble countertop like bars of gold. Vivian Cross stood by the mirror, adjusting her hair, every strand perfect, every detail rehearsed. "Yoga class downtown," she said casually, slipping on a tight navy jacket and tossing her mat over one shoulder. From her seat by the window, Eleanor Ellie Marsh glanced up from the sink, eyes resting on the small pair of beige high heels tucked neatly into Vivian's trunk. No one wore stilettos to yoga. Ellie smiled faintly. "Don't stretch too far, dear," she murmured. Vivian froze for a fraction of a second, then let out a polished laugh. "You're adorable, Ellie. Try not to burn breakfast." The door shut. Silence fell, broken only by the ticking wall clock. Upstairs, the children's laughter echoed through the hall. Ellie rinsed the dishes slowly, the warm water clouding with soap and thought. Then she wiped her hands dry, opened her purse, and checked the old silver phone, the one Thomas had taught her to use for private recordings. By 9:52 a.m., the pearl-white BMW pulled out of the driveway. Ellie followed 10 minutes later, sitting quietly in the back of a taxi. The driver, a kind-eyed man in his 60s, caught her gaze in the mirror. "People only follow someone when they already know the truth," he said, half smiling. Ellie met his eyes. "Then I suppose I'm just collecting proof." Downtown Houston shimmered in the late morning heat. The car slowed near the Argonaut Hotel, a gleaming tower of glass and marble where people went to sign contracts or break vows. Ellie paid the driver and waited under a canopy of palm leaves. The heavy glass doors spun. A figure stepped out. Vivian, hair curled, makeup flawless, not a trace of yoga on her. Her silk dress hugged her frame like armor, ocean blue and meant to be seen. She walked inside, heels clacking like the metronome of deceit. Ellie followed at a safe distance. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished wood and white orchids. Vivian crossed to the far corner of the cafe where a man in a gray suit sat waiting. Grant Mercer. Handsome, younger, all teeth and confidence. Ellie recognized him from a real estate article Jake had once shown her. They didn't shake hands. They touched fingers. Grant slid a thick brown envelope across the table. Vivian's laugh chimed, soft and dangerous. Hidden behind a planter, Ellie lifted the phone, its lens peeking through the leaves. The recording light blinked once, silent and certain. For 15 minutes, she filmed every glance, every gesture. Vivian leaned close, whispering, her manicured hand brushing Grant's sleeve. Then, as if sealing a deal, he kissed her wrist. She laughed again, eyes glittering. Ellie turned away before bile could rise. Outside, the air smelled like asphalt and betrayal. In the cab ride home, she watched the footage 3 times, each second confirming what she already knew. This was no yoga session. That evening, Vivian returned, glowing. Her cheeks flushed, perfume sharp, voice sugary. Traffic was insane, she sighed. But yoga helps me unwind. Ellie placed a cup of chamomile tea before her. With perfume that strong, she said softly, you might need detox more than yoga. Vivian blinked, the smile flickering for an instant before snapping back in place. You always have jokes, Ellie. Just observations. Later that night, the house fell into its usual pattern of silence. Jake's car hummed into the driveway. Upstairs, the children's television played faintly. When the lights dimmed, Ellie slipped into the hall and saw the faint glow leaking from Vivian's office. The laptop screen was open. No password. Ellie's pulse slowed, steady as her breath. On the top of the inbox, an email read, "Divorce paperwork nearly finished. Waiting on estate confirmation. From David Crane, attorney at law." Below that, "Once the transfer is done through the shell company in Dallas, you can proceed. Ensure the mother-in-law doesn't interfere." The air in the room turned electric. Ellie photographed every line, every signature, every timestamp. Each click of the camera sounded like a clock marking the end of Vivian's power. She closed the laptop, returned to her small garage room, and sat at the desk. The rain had begun again, faint against the roof. She opened her leather notebook and wrote, "Day 14. The liar wears silk. The betrayer smiles in daylight. The silence prepares." She slipped Thomas's fountain pen into her pocket and whispered into the dim room, "They think I'm the relic of this house. They're wrong." Through the cracked window, lightning flickered across the magnolia tree, white blossoms trembling in the dark. Ellie smiled, slow and certain. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one she was building inside. The morning sun was sharp as a blade, cutting through the curtains of the River Oaks mansion. Ellie Marsh sat at the edge of her bed, listening to the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Today, she would stop writing in silence. Today, the truth would walk out into the light. By noon, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Two figures stepped out. Vivian Cross in a crisp white suit, sunglasses too large to hide the tremor in her jaw, and Grant Mercer, polished in gray, carrying a leather briefcase. They entered without knocking. The air inside the living room felt charged, like glass about to shatter. "Ellie," Vivian said smoothly, her voice rehearsed, "we're here to settle this peacefully." "Peace," Ellie replied, her tone like still water. "That's an interesting word coming from you." Grant set the briefcase on the coffee table, clicking it open with the precision of a man who'd done this 100 times. "Mrs. Marsh," he began with a professional smile, "we're proposing a simple solution. $3 million for Vivian and the children. A family settlement to avoid legal complications." Ellie leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. "$3 million, she repeated softly. "And if I say no?" Vivian exchanged a quick look with Grant, then smiled sweetly. "Then we might have to involve the courts. You're of age, Eleanor. Sometimes judges decide people your age can't handle complex finances. Guardianship hearings can get messy." Grant nodded, calm and clinical. "An evaluation could transfer control of the estate to a trusted family member. For everyone's safety." For a moment the room seemed to contract, like air sucked out before a storm. But Ellie didn't flinch. Her eyes gleamed, cool and bright. And who would that guardian be? Vivian, perhaps. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Let's not make this personal." Ellie rose slowly, her movements deliberate, elegant. She walked to the tall glass cabinet by the window, opened the drawer, and pulled out a black folder. The sound it made against the table was small, but final. "You came here thinking you held the cards," she said softly. "You didn't ask yourself whether I might have a deck of my own." Grant frowned. "What's this?" "Your undoing," Ellie said. She opened the folder, a collection of documents, each one a nail in the coffin of deceit. Grant Mercer, outstanding gambling debts, $200,000 to the Dallas Casino Trust, forged signatures in the Austin real estate deal. I have certified copies. One call to the Bar Association, and your license is dust." Grant's composure cracked, color draining from his face. You can't prove." Ellie's gaze pinned him like glass. "Try me." Vivian's voice rose, shaky. "You're bluffing." Ellie clicked open her laptop and turned the screen toward them. The Argonaut Hotel video played silently. Vivian laughing, her hand brushing Grant's sleeve, an envelope sliding across the table. The image froze on their joined hands. "This isn't a bluff," Ellie said. "It's documentation." Vivian's mask finally broke. "You followed me," she whispered. Ellie's smile was gentle, almost maternal. "No, I went to your yoga class." The room fell deathly still. From the hallway, Jake's voice emerged, low but steady. "Is this true?" He stood there, tie loose, face pale as he read the printed emails in Ellie's hands. Divorce paperwork nearly finished. Waiting on estate confirmation. "What does that mean, Vivian?" "It's business," she blurted. "You don't understand." "It's betrayal," Ellie cut in. "Of your husband, of your children, and of this house." Vivian's voice cracked into a scream. "You deceived us. You pretended to be weak just to trap me." Ellie's tone didn't rise. "No. I stayed silent to see who would break their own mask first." Jake stepped forward, eyes wet. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have seen this." Ellie turned to him softly. "Don't apologize for being quiet, Jake. Just make sure your silence never becomes someone else's weapon again." Vivian backed toward the wall, trembling. "You think you've won?" Ellie closed the folder, calm as ever. "I didn't come to win. I came to end the noise." When Patrick Hale, the family lawyer, arrived an hour later, the papers were ready. Ellie signed each document with Thomas's fountain pen. Restraining order, asset protection, change of locks. Vivian's heels clattered down the stairs as she dragged a suitcase across the wood. "You'll regret this," she screamed. Ellie didn't look up. "You already do." The front door slammed, leaving behind a silence so deep it rang. Ellie stood by the tall windows of the glass room, the afternoon sun painting her reflection in gold. Outside, the magnolia tree swayed gently, white petals scattering like applause. She whispered to the empty house, "This isn't victory, it's restoration." And for the first time in years, the light in River Oaks felt warm again. 3 months after the storm in River Oaks, the morning paper landed on Eleanor Ellie Marsh's porch with a crisp thud. The headline read, "Broker Grant Mercer under investigation for fraud and extortion." Below it, a photo showed him leaving the courthouse, head bowed, face drained of all that charming confidence. Ellie folded the paper neatly, neither triumphant nor bitter. Justice didn't need applause. It only needed to stand upright again. That same afternoon, Patrick Hale, the family lawyer, called. "It's done," he said. "The restraining order's filed. Vivian and Mercer can't come within 100 yards of you or the children. 2 years, minimum." Ellie thanked him softly. "No more storms, Patrick. Just peace." He chuckled. "You've earned it." For the first time in years, the River Oaks house felt alive. The air was no longer heavy. Even the walls seemed to breathe again. Jake came home from therapy calmer, his eyes clearer, his voice steady. Emma and Noah, once shy and cautious, ran through the halls laughing, leaving footprints of joy in the same corridors that had once echoed with contempt. One morning, Ellie gathered them in the kitchen. "You know," she said, flipping pancakes, "this house isn't just bricks and wood, it's memory. But sometimes memories need fresh paint." Jake smiled faintly. "You mean forgiveness?" Ellie nodded. "Something like that." Weeks later, Ellie booked a one-way flight. She told Jake simply, "I need to go back to the place your father built for us when he believed peace could still exist." He understood. The flight to Cancun stretched over a silver-blue horizon. Through the window, the ocean shimmered like an endless mirror. When she arrived at Blue Cove Villa, the sun hung low, spilling gold over white walls and red-tiled roofs. The air smelled of salt, gardenias, and second chances. Inside, the villa looked untouched. Thomas's books still lined the shelves, his straw hat still hanging by the door. Ellie opened the wide windows, and the sea breeze rushed in, stirring the curtains to life. "I'm home, Thomas," she whispered, her voice breaking with peace instead of pain. The next day, she hired a local couple, Lucia and Matteo, to help maintain the villa. Lucia had kind eyes and a way of speaking that made the word Senora sound like respect, not distance. "This house has soul," she said, smiling. It waited for someone to return. Every morning, Ellie walked the shoreline at sunrise. The sand was cool beneath her bare feet, waves curling softly around her ankles. Each step washed away a fragment of the past. "You can't hold water," she murmured, "but it still teaches you how to let go." In the afternoons, she volunteered at the local hospital, helping tourists find their way, comforting the anxious. "You bring calm, Senora," a young nurse told her once. "People leave lighter after speaking with you." Ellie smiled. "That's what surviving a storm does. It teaches you to speak softly." One evening, as the sky blazed orange, her phone buzzed with a video call. Jake's face filled the screen, softer than she'd ever seen it. Emma and Noah squeezed in, grinning. "Grandma, we planted tomatoes," Noah said proudly. "They're almost taller than me," Ellie laughed. "Everything beautiful starts with planting." Jake watched her, voice low. "Mom, you look happy." "I am," she said, "because I'm not afraid anymore. Fear is the worst kind of prison." A few weeks later, a text appeared from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything." The name, Vivian. Ellie stared at it for a long moment, then quietly deleted it. Not out of anger, but release. Some apologies arrive too late, when the person receiving them no longer needs them to heal. That night, the sea outside glowed silver under the moonlight. Ellie sat at Thomas's old desk, took out her pen, and began a letter. "Thomas, I kept what you left me. Not the money, but the dignity. I learned that victory isn't revenge. It's standing tall without losing your heart. Jake has found his courage. The children are growing in light. And me. I've finally forgiven everything, even myself." She folded the letter and placed it beside their wedding photo. Outside, the waves whispered against the rocks, steady and eternal. Before bed, she stepped onto the porch. The ocean stretched wide and alive, the wind warm on her face. Somewhere in the distance, a lighthouse flickered, a single beam sweeping across the dark, patient and constant. Ellie smiled, whispering into the wind, "You were right, Thomas. The light always returns." And as she closed her eyes, the waves kept their rhythm, a lullaby for a woman who had finally reclaimed not just her home, but herself.